For centuries, a wild green loaded with protein and minerals kept Maya families nourished. So why did modern markets reject it as too dangerous to risk? The answer is not a simple toxin scare. With one precise household ritual, chaya transforms from poisonous to life-giving, a balancing act that once demanded intimate knowledge. But when convenience replaced wisdom, this superfood nearly vanished, threatening a lineage of safety learned by heart. What does it really cost to lose food that requires remembering? A single chaya leaf, deep green and glossy, hides a threat invisible to the naked eye. Within its cells are chemical defense weights, cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that can release hydrogen cyanide when the plant is damaged or chewed. In its raw form, chaya is not just unpalatable but actively hazardous. Even a handful of uncooked leaves contains enough of these glycosides to trigger symptoms, dizziness, nausea, and in high doses far more severe consequences. The risk is not theoretical. Laboratory analysis of fresh chaya has measured hydrogen cyanide levels as high as 102 mg per 100 grams, far above internationally accepted safety thresholds for food. The danger does not end with what is inside. On the surface, chaya's stinging hairs, trichomes line every leaf and stem. These microscopic needles break off at the slightest touch, injecting irritants that can cause a burning rash or swelling on exposed skin. For generations, Maya families learned to harvest chaya with care, stripping stems and handling leaves with respect. Ethnobotanists studying these communities describe the plant as a paradox, essential for survival, yet risky enough to demand constant vigilance. The threat is not uniform. Young leaves, prized for their tenderness, often carry the highest concentration of glycosides. Even the sap can irritate eyes or mucous membranes. The plant's defense mechanisms evolved to deter herbivores, but for humans, the consequences of ignoring them can be swift and unforgiving. Hydrogen cyanide, once released, interferes with the body's ability to use oxygen. Ingesting raw chaya can lead to headaches, rapid breathing, confusion, and in rare cases, fatal poisoning. The stinging hairs, meanwhile, ensure that even a casual brush against the leaves is memorable. These hazards are not unique to chaya. Cassava and some beans carry similar risks, but the combination of chemical and physical defenses makes this plant especially formidable. The question then is not whether chaya can nourish. It is whether the line between food and poison can be walked safely, and how generations learn to do so with nothing but observation, memory, and tradition. A clay pot sits over a modest flame. Donna Rosa, sleeves rolled, drops a handful of chia leaves into boiling water. The leaves swirl, their colour deepening from dull green to a vivid, almost emerald shade. Steam rises, carrying a faint grassy aroma. She stirs with a wooden spoon, careful to keep her hands away from the rim. 20 minutes pass. The water bubbles steadily, never allowed to boil dry. This is not a guess or a family superstition. It is the result of generations watching, tasting, and learning what keeps a family healthy. In the background, a laboratory printout bears witness. Before cooking, a sample of raw chaya leaf measured over 100 mg of hydrogen cyanide per 100 grams, far beyond what any food authority would allow. After simmering for 20 minutes, the same test shows a dramatic drop. Residual cyanide falls below detectable limits, well under the World Health Organization's safety threshold. The science matches the tradition. Boiling for 20 minutes transforms a hazardous plant into a safe, nourishing food. A toxicologist in a white coat reviews the data. She notes the numbers, then gestures to the pot on the stove. Heat, she explains, breaks down the cyanogenic glycosides, releasing the dangerous gas harmlessly into the air. The liquid left behind, once drained, is safe. The leaves, now tender and mild, are ready for the next step, sautéed with onion, blended into soup, or folded into a tamal. The safety protocol is clear. Simmer in plenty of water uncovered for a full 20 minutes. No shortcuts, no guesswork. This method is not a relic or a myth. It is an empirical solution confirmed by modern science and practiced daily in Maya kitchens. With this knowledge, chaya becomes a staple, not a gamble. The path from hazard to nourishment is open, as long as the wisdom is remembered and the pot kept simmering. A slender branch, freshly cut from a chaya bush, rests in the hands of Donna Rosa. She turns it gently, inspecting the pale green nodes where new growth will sprout. In Maya villages across the Yucatan Peninsula, this simple act, taking a cutting, is the first step in a cycle that has repeated for more than 15 centuries. Chaya's story begins here, not with seeds, but with cuttings pressed into the earth beside kitchens, along fences, or in the corners of family gardens. The plant's resilience is legendary. Even in poor soils and drought, a single stem can root and leaf out within weeks, providing a steady supply of greens throughout the year. Spanish chronicles from the 16th century describe Maya families planting chaya wherever they settled, ensuring food security in times of plenty and want. The Book of Chilam Balam, a pre-Columbian Maya text, lists chaya as a staple, its leaves gathered daily for the table. Elders remember their mothers and grandmothers tending these shrubs, harvesting only the youngest, most tender leaves for cooking. Some recall rituals, quiet words of thanks, or a gentle touch before cutting, honouring the plant's power and the risks it carries. Propagation by cuttings shaped how chaya spread through households and communities. A neighbour might share a branch with a newlywed, or a grandmother might plant a row to mark the birth of a child. Over generations, these living fences became archives of family history and knowledge. Each plant, a link in an unbroken chain of stewardship rooted in Maya soil and memory. Today, Donna Rosa's careful hands keep that lineage alive, passing on skills that transform a dangerous plant into daily nourishment. A handwritten recipe, worn at the edges, rests beside the clay pot. Donna Rosa traces the lines with her finger, reciting each step to her granddaughter Lucia, who stands on a wooden stool to reach the counter. The kitchen fills with the sounds of chopping, sizzling, and quiet instruction. Lucia listens closely, learning not only how to cook chaya, but why each step matters. The recipe calls for young leaves washed and simmered, then drained and chopped before folding them into corn dough for tamales. This is one of nearly 70 ways chaya has been prepared in Maya kitchens, recipes carried in memory, shared in whispers, and now written down to endure. Before the camera rolls, Donna Rosa gives her consent, her voice steady and clear. She explains that these recipes belong to her family, her community, and that sharing them is a gift, not a transaction. The film crew records her words, ensuring that her knowledge is attributed, not extracted. Lucia, with her hair pulled back in a bright ribbon, stirs the pot under her grandmother's watchful eye. Each movement is careful, deliberate, a living demonstration of trust and continuity. Ethical documentation is more than a formality here. It is a promise to honour the source, to recognise the hands that kept chaya alive through centuries of change. Recipes are not just instructions, they are vessels of language, memory, and identity. As Lucia learns to taste for tenderness, to judge doneness by colour and scent, she becomes part of an unbroken chain. The knowledge is not locked away in books or laboratories, but passed from hand to hand, voice to voice, with respect and consent at every step. A nutritionist stands behind a lab bench holding two plates, one piled with boiled chaya leaves and the other with fresh spinach. She reads the numbers aloud. Per 100 grams, chaya delivers nearly twice the protein of spinach, 5.7 grams, compared to just over 3 grams. Calcium comes in at 199 milligrams, double what spinach offers. Iron is where the difference grows even sharper. Chaya provides 11.4 milligrams, while spinach rarely exceeds 5 milligrams. Vitamin A, essential for vision and immunity, is 4 times higher in chaya. Vitamin C, crucial for the immune system and iron absorption, clocks in at 165 milligrams, 3 to 6 times more than spinach even after boiling. The nutritionist points to a chart. Row after row, chaya outpaces its supermarket rival. For families in the Yucatan, these numbers were never just theory. A single serving of chaya could fill gaps left by meatless days, offering enough protein to help children grow and enough iron to prevent anemia. Calcium in every bite supported strong bones, especially for women and the elderly. The vitamin content meant fewer illnesses and quicker recovery. Donna Rosa, now seated at her kitchen table, tastes a spoonful of chaya soup. She describes how after a long day in the fields, this simple dish revived her energy. For her and for generations before her, the plant's abundance was not just in leaves, but in life sustained. Even humanitarian organizations now recognize chaya as a powerhouse for developing regions, nutrient-dense, drought-resistant, and able to thrive where other crops fail. The numbers are clear. In a world searching for affordable, sustainable nutrition, chaya stands among the most valuable greens ever cultivated. A mature chaya shrub stands tall, its branches stretching upwards, heavy with leaves even as the dry season lingers. In fields where maize falters and garden beds turn brittle, chaya thrives. Its roots dig deep, tapping moisture long after the rains have faded. This is no delicate annual. Chaya is a perennial growing year after year, often reaching 6 meters in height without the need for replanting. For families like Donna Rosa's, that means a steady source of greens through the hottest months when other crops wither. An agronomist surveys the rows, counting the yield by hand. One healthy shrub can produce several kilograms of leaves per cutting, and with careful harvesting, new growth returns in weeks. Unlike spinach or lettuce, which demand constant sowing and careful watering, chaya shrugs off drought. It flourishes in poor soils, requires little fertilizer, and resists pests that devastate other vegetables. In regions where water is precious and the climate grows less predictable each year, this resilience is more than convenience, it is survival. The plant's perennial habit means less labour and fewer inputs. A single cutting pressed into the ground can become a hedge within a season, marking boundaries or sheltering a kitchen garden. Even after years of neglect, chaya rebounds with the first rain, offering a burst of leaves when little else will grow. For small farmers facing uncertain weather and shrinking resources, this reliability is a promise that few crops can match. Donna Rosa gestures to her garden where chaya stands green and abundant while other beds lie bare. In her lifetime, she has seen droughts empty the markets and thin the harvests, but the chaya bush always endures. Each cutting, each harvest is a quiet testament to a plant built for endurance, a living answer to the question of how to feed a family when the world outside the fence grows harsher. In the heart of Merida's central market, the stalls once overflowed with every kind of green, epazote, quelites and chaya, bundled in rough twine. But by the late 1980s, those bundles began to vanish. A market vendor named Senora Beatrice remembers the change with a shake of her head. Inspectors arrived with new rules. Only vegetables that could be washed, bagged and labelled for safety were allowed. Chaya, with its stinging hairs and need for careful boiling, did not fit the checklist. Vendors faced fines for selling it fresh, so most stopped overnight. Customers, especially younger ones, turned to bagged spinach and lettuce, trusting the supermarket's promise of convenience and safety. A historian from the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán traces the roots of this disappearance further back, to the era when export crops dominated the peninsula. Land once used for home gardens, milpas full of chaya, squash and beans, was converted to henequen for rope, destined for ships and factories far from Yucatan. Government pamphlets from the 1950s and the 1960s, still filed in municipal archives, urged farmers to focus on cash crops, calling traditional greens unmodern and unreliable. In practice, this meant less space and less time for household foods like chaya. The knowledge of how to grow and cook it, passed down mostly by women, began to fade as families moved to cities in search of work. Migration changed more than diets. In urban apartments, there was no yard for a chaya bush, no grandmother to teach the difference between tender and tough leaves, no daily ritual of simmering and tasting. The rhythms of the kitchen shifted. Ready-to-eat vegetables became the norm, and foods that required special handling, especially those with a reputation for danger, were quietly dropped from family tables. For vendors like Beatrice, the loss was more than economic. Chaya sales had supported her family for years. Now she watches shoppers pass, aware of what is missing. The historian points to a deeper cost, the erosion of knowledge that once made dangerous foods safe, and the narrowing of choices in markets shaped by distant policies and industrial priorities. What was once a daily staple became a memory, edged out not by a single event but by the slow, steady pressure of rules, markets and migration. On the outskirts of Oxkutskab, a small sign hangs from a wire fence, Banco Comunitario de Semillas Chaya. Inside, rows of clay pots hold cuttings from dozens of chaya bushes, each tagged with the name of the family who donated it. The seed bank steward, Maria Kowich, moves between the pots, checking for new shoots. She explains that every cutting here is a promise, an agreement between neighbours to keep chaya alive, not just as a memory, but as a living part of their daily meals. When a family needs a new plant, they sign their name and receive a cutting, along with instructions for safe preparation, handed down from elders and now written on laminated cards. In 2024, the Municipal Council of Oxkutskab passed a new code allowing the sale of chaya in local markets, provided each bundle carries a label that reads, "For consumption only, after boiling 20 minutes." The regulation is simple, but significant. It recognises the plant's value and the expertise of those who know how to handle it safely. Municipal official Jorge Pech describes the policy as a bridge, one that connects scientific validation with traditional knowledge. Inspections focus on labelling and education, not punishment. Vendors receive training from community cooks and health workers, ensuring that every buyer understands the need for proper preparation. Non-profit groups like Kar Sitak Mean have joined these efforts, distributing chaya cuttings to school gardens and hosting workshops in Maya and Spanish. Their goal is not just to revive a crop, but to restore the web of relationships that once made food both safe and abundant. At the annual seed exchange, elders share stories and recipes, and children learn to recognize the plant by touch and scent. The revival is careful, rooted in respect for both tradition and evidence. As chaya returns to market stalls and home gardens, it does so on new terms, guided by community stewardship, scientific backing, and a shared commitment to nourishment and safety. Today, nutrient-rich plants like chaya remain overlooked not for lack of value, but for lack of cultural memory and trust in traditional wisdom. As more communities seek alternatives to industrial food systems, the knowledge to safely unlock forgotten foods grows urgent. The question is no longer whether these plants nourish us, but whether we're willing to listen to the people who always knew how. What would you reclaim from the past?